It says, according to the Center for American Progress, the topic of work and family life balance. In 1960, only 20% of mothers worked. Today, 70% of American children live in households where all adults are employed.
Yeah, that's just crazy to me.
Like, imagine in a 60-year period, half of all parents that used to be the at-home caregiver for children just went into the workforce. And yet, like, families have less money to live on.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about where we're at as, like, a society in general.
It's bad.
You know, there's even a lot of people who have to work 2 jobs and stuff just to make ends meet, and it's, you know, it feels like people aren't being properly compensated for their time. I feel like time in general, like, it's not even necessarily the value of the work, but just people's time is not very valued, and I think that's a genuine problem.
The U.S. is the only country in the Americas without a national paid parental leave benefit. The average is over 12 weeks of paid leave anywhere other than Europe, and over 20 weeks in Europe. 0 industrialized nations are without mandatory option for new parents to take parental leave other than the United States. At least 134 countries have laws setting the maximum length of the work week, and the U.S. does not. In the U.S., 85.8% of males and 66.5% of females work more than 40 hours per week. According to the ILO, Americans work 137 more hours per year than Japanese workers, 260 more hours per year than British workers, and 499 more hours per year than French workers.
You know, and I think that's pretty interesting because I think a lot of people have the and obviously I'm not to speak on, like, the work conditions themselves, but just the time spent. Like, I think it says a lot that our country is working more than other places when other people probably see it the other way around. I think a lot of people think that, especially like Eastern countries like China and Japan and, you know, a lot of Asian countries, actually they would probably think that they work longer than us, just given like the stereotypes about their work conditions. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Pretty recently, I was actually watching like some YouTube videos because I was thinking about like this channel and what I wanted to do for this show, right? And Jon Stewart is a really, really big inspiration for me. Like, he was part of the reason I got into politics. Mm-hmm. One of the first people I watched on TV, and it's funny because when I first started watching him, I disagreed with him completely, but I could appreciate that he was a comedy mastermind. You know, like his comedic timing is second to none, really. And so I'm watching some old clips of him, and I going back and forth with like Bill O'Reilly, and they had like this big debate a few years back, and I had completely forgotten, I guess, and I shouldn't have, just how much right-wing media sold the story back in the Mitt Romney days that there were 2 Americas, right? There was the lazy America, and then there was the America that actually produces things and makes the economy work. And they ran with this for decades. And yet, all it takes is a Wikipedia search to read some statistics and you find out we aren't lazy at all. We're the most work-to-death country on the planet, you know? It's like, how did they get away with that misinformation for so long?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with exactly what you just said. Is just a lot of those talking points, especially from older times. You know, it's like how the baby boomers called the millennial generation lazy. Like, oh, they don't work as hard as us, when the statistics just don't reflect that. And I think it has a lot to do with the political beliefs reflected that kind of caused that, you know, the disagreements between the two sides.
Zoltaga says it's because they inferred that if you are poor, it's because you're lazy. It's 100% it. And a lot of people bought into that. I know I certainly did when I first went into the workforce. Like, I thought I could work my way out of having kids young and land on my own 2 feet. And so I worked myself to death 60, 70 hours a week and still got nowhere. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. Socioeconomic status probably is a majority of the reason why people believe the things that they do.
Yeah. Yeah, you think it's your fault that you're in that situation. I know I did, especially when my kids were little. It's like,
absolutely.
this is. I just haven't worked hard enough. That's why we can't pay our bills this month or whatever. Which is such a toxic mindset because, I feel like other countries have this understanding that there's a cap on what a person can realistically do for labor for other people. You have to have time for yourself. You have to have time for your family,
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think it's almost a dangerous mindset, too, especially when you're talking to people who might be a little bit more naive about the whole thing. Kind of like what you were talking about, like, oh, if I just work harder, I'll make more money. Like, it's just, like, if you have that frame of mind going into the workforce, you could set yourself up for some pretty damaging effects, being under severe amounts of stress and really just kneecapping your free time and, time with loved ones and family. Friends, you can really set yourself up for a dangerous situation when you believe that more time spent working equals more money. Like, that's just not the case and not the world that we live in.
Sometimes that happens, but it's usually not worth it. It's usually not worth it because in the long run, like what happened to me is I worked myself into being incredibly unhealthy. Like, I never took time to eat right. Even prepare good meals. You don't have time when you're working 70 hours. You just eat shit all day long. Stop at the fucking gas station, get Red Bull and garbage.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, even at 40 hours a week,
that's exactly
have that effect.
Yep, 100%.
Exactly.
100.
I find it with my job. Like, you get overworked, you get physically tired out, you get mentally tired out, and you just can't afford the time of day to work on things that you need to work on to keep your health intact.
A lot of people think that the economy would slow down if we let me pull up this article. I have a really good article on this actually. A lot of people think that it has to be this way for the economy to keep going, right? But turns out that's actually not the case. I'm going to see if I can find this graph here. Oh yeah, here it is. So this is a graph. I think we can break this out to a 50-year, starting in 1970. Do you see this? Look at this.
Yeah, I can see the graph.
So this is GDP per capita, or in other words, income per capita. Even if we start at 1980, so we're only talking about 40 years, we were right at about $28,000. It's double. So if GDP per capita is double, that means the average person should be able to work half as much and consume the same. Or work the same and be consuming twice as much as they were. But that's not what's happened, obviously.
Yeah.
People have to work more and they get less of a slice of this because it's all going to the top.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, capitalism ultimately is an irreversible game, Like, it's not like the higher-ups just get less money. It's not like the people who inherit the wealth get less money. Like, it just keeps going up. And, it's the reason why we see the middle class, quickly disappearing, like how Bernie Sanders always talks about. It's like we have poor people and we have rich people now. Like, there's a very quickly dying middle class. Exactly.